back, everybody, to the SmallTown Collectibles YouTube channel. I am Jimmy Don Kerr. My guest today just recently hit his 1,000 subscriber mark, and so I'm excited to have him on, talk to him about his YouTube journey. So everybody, join me in welcoming to 10 Questions, the Southern Comic Geek. How's it going, man?
Thanks for having me on, Jimmy.
Yeah, no problem, brother. Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. I've watched your channel for a while and kind of watched your growth, and look to your channel as one to, maybe kind of model and imitate somewhat to try to help my growth as well. So I'm really excited to have you on. So let's just jump right into it, man. The first question is always this: who or what got you into collecting?
Let's see, collecting, aka hoarding.
Yes, we all have that problem.
Yes, it's a problem sometimes. I have always been a reader. I picked up my first comic, which was an ASM, when I was 5. So back in 1983, and picked it up and read what I could, but liked the pictures, and so continued to collect. And I was always a little bit of OCD, as they call it these days. And so it was kind of up my alley to try to keep comics in, impeccable shape. So life happened, I got out, but yeah, I mean, that's what got me into comics. Is just as interesting. I've always had a imagination. And so that's what I liked about the comics, kind of the escapism, right?
Right, sure. No, and I mean, I think that's a lot of us, did you have anybody in your family that collected or read comic books, or was it just something you kind of saw a book in the supermarket or wherever and you picked it up and you're like, wow, this is cool?
Yeah, that was what it was, because nobody else read. Unfortunately, none of my kids have taken up reading and like I did, and I dug the art, dug the story, and it's just one of those things that I picked up. And to your point with the supermarket, I had the benefit, like people my age and older did, being able to go to the supermarket and be able to grab a comic book for $1 or less, and be able to get them that way. Unfortunately, kids these days don't have access to that. They have digital, but that's another story for another day.
Right. Well, no, I mean, because like I would go and, my mom would be shopping. I would always, back then they had a magazine rack, right? Like there was a whole section where there was, and there's a lot of places still have that. But I remember where, they had all the magazines, and then they would have comic books. And, like I've told on here many times, I love Firestorm. And the reason that I love Firestorm is because at the supermarket, the books would be there, and that yellow, orange, whatever, just drew me to it. And, and I loved it. And that was my first love as a comic book reader, was Firestorm. And you would have Batman, you would have Spider-Man, you would have those. And so I'm a big fan of all those as well. And then Superman, but Firestorm was the first one that I remember vividly just seeing, sitting on the rack and being like, wow.
Well, the interesting thing about that, because my current big run that I'm working on is Batman. And my first Batman comic was the first appearance of Tim Drake that came out in 1989, the same time that the movie with Michael Keaton came out, right? So that was the first Batman book I picked up off the rack around the corner from my house where I live now. And I just think that and movies were not as plentiful as what they are today. And so I just think that these comic book companies are missing out on not putting these comics out in front of kids when they're walking out of the movie theater or somewhere like that, to get these kids enthralled. I heard a interview with Chris Claremont. He said one of the things that is plaguing is the big two, especially Marvel and DC, is getting new readership in. And so I think that would go a long way to getting those new readers in, inspiring the next generation of collectors.
I agree. I mean, I think that's a great point too with the movies, because of the way movies are now. And it might be an attraction back to the movie theater as well, because, you got everything going streaming right now. Mm-hmm. I watched Kong versus Godzilla the other night, at my house, you know, and it's really easy when you're just paying that subscription every month to watch that. And it could be a mutually beneficial thing where you have maybe some books there. There's a superhero movie, and you have some books there that people can read as well. I think that's a great thought, and I'd never really thought about that myself. But because you're right, I mean, like, you know, you go to the supermarket today, it's not like it was. It was weird because, like, I was in Walmart the other day, and they had some books there, but it was those 3-packs or whatever that they sell. But they weren't just displayed like they were when I was a kid, and it just didn't catch your attention. And I would stand there the whole time my mom was shopping and read through the books. Now, do you just read comic books, or do you like books themselves? Like, just do you read all kinds of different things?
Well, I read all kinds of different things. So you can't see it over here, but I have a wall of books that spans the whole wall. I have my Star Wars books because I read Star Wars before Star Wars got cool again, and assortment of other books. And I try to balance my reading between fiction, something like a biography, and some kind of true story or whatever. And then that way I don't get too lost out there and wander fantasy land. But that's how I do it. But so I do read books and picture books.
Yeah, well, I do the same thing because I'm like you. The comic books are an escape for me. My day life, or I call it my real life now that I've got this YouTube life. I call it my real life is very stressful. It's it's high paced, it's fast paced. It's I'm constantly going. And when I get a second to sit down and just read a comic book and escape into that book, or whatever for a little while, it is an absolute release for me. And it's kind of my happy place if I'm being honest.
Sure.
Yeah. So, all right. Question 2 is you're a reader. You're collecting comic books. You're reading comic books. Like, what brought on the YouTube channel? Like, what caused you to start the YouTube channel?
So maybe you're the same way, but when I was a kid and collecting back then, it was not cool to be a nerd. So it was one of those things that you kind of hid in your closet, and then somebody leaks something out on the playground, and you say, "Oh, you're a comic book collector. Hey, meet me at my house. We'll talk comics."
Right.
You didn't have these shirts. I mean, I had an X-Men shirt, and I remember going to school. It was a Jim Lee X-Men shirt. It's a scene in I forget but it's Wolverine holding a Skrull who's pretending to be Professor X. And I had that shirt, and people looking at me like, "What is wrong with this guy?" But nowadays that's cool. So you really didn't have but a handful, especially me growing up in rural Mississippi, didn't really have but a handful of people you could talk to about that. So when I got back into the game, probably even more so now, because like you and everybody else, we have our professional real lives. And, it's in the business world, and, you just don't go out and just talk comic books. And so I saw these people doing these YouTube channels and just kind of really putting out there, this is what I'm doing, not that it's anything special. This is what I'm doing. So I started like everybody else, or a lot of other people rather, in that I did the no faces chat. I put, books out there, you never saw my face, and then eventually you see my face. And then I started doing live shows, and then kind of went into the auction scene just because of selling books and being able to capitalize on that and feed money back into the hobby. But yeah, I mean, that's why I got into the YouTube game. I'm sure everybody has that goal to get to 1,000 subscribers and get monetized and that type of thing. And I certainly did. But the main thing was just part of the escape, kind of venting, what I was putting out there. And other people started liking the videos. I'm like, this is crazy. I mean, people say I have an accent. I don't really think I have one, but people say I have an accent, and people come and watch the videos, and they're giving thumbs up and saying stuff. And I'm like, what I do? It was nothing special. I don't edit.
I was just talking. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't edit my stuff. I'm really just venting. I'll get on a rant or two about CGC or some kind of other thing, or comic books in general, and just give my opinion for what it's worth. And people were watching the videos. I'm like, cool. And I've got to meet a lot of great people as a result of it. I mean, that wasn't the original intent, but I have gotten to meet several YouTube creators and hang out and go comic book hunting and things like that. So it's been great.
Yeah, no, well, you don't have an accent at all. Like, I mean, as far as it's a lot like mine. I don't think I have an accent either until I call somewhere up north. And the biggest thing, like, I own a mortgage company, right? So I deal with a lot of investors up north, these different banks up in New York City and places like that. And I'll call and I'll say, "This is Jimmy Kerr," and they'll say, "Jamie," and I'll say, "No, Jimmy." And they're like, "Jamie?" I'm like, Jimmy, fool. It's Jimmy.
Right,
Because
right.
I don't think I have an accent at all. I think I speak perfectly. But no, one of the things that drew me to your channel is not that you really have an accent, but you do talk kind of like I do. And it's like you said, it's cool to find somebody out there that's kind of like you. You live in the rural South. I live in the rural South, more middle of the country, but rural Eastern Kentucky. And I don't know, man. It's just cool to find like-minded people out there that are similar to you and enjoy the things you do. Because to what you said, like when I was in high school, I wasn't like I wasn't your typical, I guess, what you would call a nerd. I played basketball, I played sports, but none of my friends knew that I read comic books because that was something I did with my uncle and my dad. And, I would go around with them. My uncle was, he would pick, he sold at flea markets and things like that. And I would go around with him. And that's what really got me into it, is because I'd be with him and then he'd let me go through them and I get to read them. And I thought it was just the greatest thing ever, and then like I said, see him at the supermarket, and then going with him just kind of just expanded that love that I have for the collectibles and also really the resale game, because
Sure.
that's what he did. So I think your channel kind of speaks to me in that way. So question 3, and for people who watch my channel or who maybe watch 10 Questions that don't necessarily know about your channel, what can they expect to see on there?
Comic book ramblings, rants, lots of books, discussions, auctions, pretty much the whole gamut. And I've actually started doing some interviews similar to what you do on your channel with collectors regarding certain collections. I've talked Batman, I've talked Valiant Comics, things of that nature. Like I said, I sell books on the channel and just show what I purchase, what I'm purchasing, and what I think about the stuff that I purchased. But I've actually done some toys now, which is another whole thing to get into, rabbit hole. And so, yeah, I mean, a bunch of stuff as it relates to comic book culture.
And question 4 was like, is there a particular type of content that you prefer to do? As far as like I've seen you on a few lives and some of those things with some of the other channels we know, but is there a particular thing that you do that you just really like to do? Like when you do it, you're like, oh, I love this.
Doing the talking about shows about Batman or whatever this other person collects, and just kind of showing off each other's collections on the shows. Those are probably my favorite shows. Those are the ones that get the least amount of views. So really, it's just me, talking up a subject that I like to talk about. In particular, like Valiant Comics. Not a lot of folks collect Valiant Comics. You go on the auction scene, nobody's selling the stuff. So when you get somebody that can nerd and geek out on the same thing that you do, it's interesting. And so really, those are more for me than they are for a bunch of other folks.
That's interesting. Like, is there a particular type of content that you enjoy watching? Like, if you're going to seek something out, is there something that you seek out to watch?
I'm really bad about watching auctions. But and the reasoning, normally I'll just like turn it on and then I'll zone out. I'll be reading a book or doing something else. And I'll buy stuff off of auctions, especially late night auctions, because people put stuff up for cheaper than I know I can, turn around and flip it fairly easy. But and then I'm also seeing what other people are buying, right? Because a lot of times the same people are in that person's auctions or the same people in my auctions. And so, what are people interested in? It kind of gives my ear to the ground. But other than that, I like the interview stuff as well, learning about other people in the community. I know you had, what's her name? Comic Books Will Break Your
Oh
Heart.
yeah, Jennifer.
Yeah. So I think that was the last one you did, right?
That was.
I saw that one and, some other ones that you've done and, just learning about different people in the community, uh, like that.
No, it's hands down my favorite thing to do. Like, I love doing this. Like, if I could do nothing but this, I would. I enjoy, like, I am not one that necessarily likes to show off my collection. I don't know why. I have a really nice collection. A lot of it's in a safety deposit box, the really good stuff. I've never been one to necessarily show. I like to see you. Like, I like watching your channel and seeing you show off what you got. Like, I think it was a book the other day that you got that was an homage to, it was a Batman or maybe a Detective Comic books that an artist had drawn.
Batman 181. It was
Yes.
an homage to that, and it was the animated series signed by Kevin Conroy and the other voice actors too.
That was so cool. Like, I saw that and I really enjoy watching those. I'm like you. I like watching the auctions, but it's primarily to know what people are after. Like, if I'm out somewhere and I'm picking through books, like Star Wars, people are looking for Star Wars, right? So you find some good Star Wars books cheap that maybe you can flip and make a little money on. And like I said, buy something that you really want. So I like auctions too. So question 5 is, you just recently hit your 1,000 subscriber count, right? So you just recently hit that. How did it make you feel to hit that? Because I think that is the initial goal for all of us. Is like, my first goal was 100. Once I got 100, I said I have to have 100,000. But, as far as, like the real initial goal is to get to 1,000 so that you can monetize if you want to. Right. How did that feel, to get there?
Well, so it's been kind of a grind at times, as you know. It ebbs and flows. I mean, you'll wake up, you got 5 new subscribers, and then all of a sudden YouTube takes 10 of them away, or it is several days before a new subscriber, and you start, at least I do, start basing your worth of your channel on subscribers or viewer count. And so there's been multiple times that I've had to step back from that and say, okay, look, why am I doing this? I'm not going to get rich on monetization. Okay. I do have some sponsorships and the like in the works, but I'm not going to get rich on that. That's just not my main gig. Okay. My main thing, like I told you earlier, was to meet new people, and show off what I've got, and talk about what I like. So that's why I've had to back off on some of that. Having said that, I still wanted to be at 1,000. It is kind of surreal because I was at 940 and jumped in a chat with somebody, and they said, "Hey, I'm glad you're here. I've got something for you." And I said, "What's he talking about?" And I actually clicked off of his show and went to another show, was watching it, and all of a sudden started getting all these notifications on my phone. And he was doing a sub push for me. And it pushed me from 940 to 1,002.
Wow.
And just in the space of 10, 15 minutes.
Was that Wink?
What's that?
Was that Wink that did that?
Mm-hmm.
I thought I saw that. I know he did the same thing for DJ Links to get him over and pushed him over 1,000.
Yeah, so I jumped back in. I was like, "What's going on?" And so yeah, it pushed me over 1,000. So then I had to back up a little bit because, like I said, sometimes YouTube will come and it giveth and it taketh away. But it stayed there, and I'm at 1,016 now or something like that. So.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because something that I've talked to my kids, because my kids are young. They're, one just turned 13 yesterday, became a teenager yesterday. The other's 15. And, they live on their phones. They live on social media. They live on those things. And I've heard them say many times that, this thing got 1,000 views, or, this got that, or why didn't this get any likes? And it almost kind of makes them sad. And I've said, look, likes on social media do not define you, and who you are. But then I found myself, when I started doing this YouTube thing, I was checking my subscriber count at times like I was on crack. I mean, like I would literally every hour I was just checking it, or every 15 minutes, did you get a new sub? Did you get and I, the same thing you said, I had to step back from it and say, okay, why are you doing this? I initially did it to prove something to my girls, that you can do anything. And it turned into this community that and I've said it on here many times, I was missing something in my heart and did not know it. And I found it through YouTube and through the collectibles community. And so I had to back up and say, that's it. I can't, I can't do that anymore. So I make myself stay off of it, and I will check it about once every week, or maybe once every, 3 or 4 days, depending on if I had something good come out and I wanted to see how people react to it.
Right.
But I will generally take it on Saturday. Saturday is kind of my day to do things. And I will go and look at the analytics. I'll go look and see what got views, what got this, so that I can kind of, plan my content down the road. Because I'm an analytical person by nature. I look at numbers by nature. I can't help it. So that's the thing that I look at when I do this. But you're right. It's just funny that you said that, because I have felt that same way myself. But I'm like, I don't really, that's not why I'm doing this.
Right.
It started as one thing and turned into something completely different, which was awesome.
Sure. Same here. And with me, and I talked to DJ Links about this because his was the same way. We had the watch time, so people were watching enough for us to be monetized, but we didn't have the sub count. But because we're programmed to think, okay, you're not successful unless you have at least 1,000 subs, it didn't matter about the watch time. And so, because I've known people that have gotten 1,000 subs and didn't have the watch time. So what good is that, right?
Right.
So in other words, you've got more subs than me, but yet your people aren't watching your stuff. And so, the watch hours, like I was sharing with DJ Links, that's the more important indicator that people are liking what you're doing.
I agree.
And you're talking about young kids. I've got 6, and I've got the oldest one. He'll be 24 this year, and the youngest one will be 2 this year. My wife and I got empty nest before our nest was empty. We started young, so that's kind of how we have that plethora of ages. But the middle child now, the fourth child, I start numbering them. But the fourth child, he went to a con with me last year before Corona kind of shut everything down. And somebody says, "Hey, you're Southern Comic Geek," and I was like, that's the first time that had ever happened. And he looked at me like, what? And I go, hey, I'm going to get some street cred,
That's right.
But, it didn't work.
It never does. I had a similar thing happen to me, in this little small town I live in. There's some young kids, and we were at a football game or something, and these little kids walked up to me and said, "Hey, can I have my picture with you?" And I was like, "Why?" And they said, "Oh, you're SmallTown Collectibles." And I'm like, well, yeah. And my daughter was with me because she was cheering. She was with me, and she looked at me, and I looked at her, and I was like, okay, that's weird. So I took the picture. I thought, I was like, oh, dude, I've jumped up as far in my kids' eyes. No, not at all.
No. Well, and the funny thing is that some of my older daughter's friends, she'll be 19 Monday, but my older daughter's friends, they think it's cool, the fact that, I got subs and people comment and all that kind of stuff. And my daughter's just like, oh my goodness.
Me too. Because my daughter's like, my youngest daughter's friends, like, she just rolls her eyes. Like, somewhere right now she's rolling her eyes at me, I promise, because she knows I'm up here doing this. And she's rolling her eyes, but her friends want to come on my channel. They're like, can we order, they wanted to order some chocolates from overseas somewhere and then taste test them. And so I ordered them. They haven't come yet, but I ordered them, and I'm going to bring some of them on the channel with me, and we're going to taste test some chocolate. I said, yeah, but my daughter's like, are you kidding me? I don't know. It's just funny. It kind of cracks me up. So, question 6 is, and this has a lot to do, because a lot of times when I bring people on here, it's because they've had some success. And one of the things that I want my viewers to kind of find out is, some tips, like things that you did that you think worked, that helped you get to the 1,000 subs, maybe some things that didn't work. Can you talk a little bit about that? Just, share some of that.
Well, my disclaimer as I start to say all this is that I'm no expert by any means. But, I do not edit my stuff, as I said earlier. I could have a lot more subs, but then it's more of a job to me because that's more work. Some people are technical oriented and they like that stuff. So maybe it's not work to them. It is to me. So when I started doing this, I still wanted to get to 1,000. I was kind of struggling to get up. And one of the tips that I got from somebody in the community was to do thumbnails. And so there's a website called Canva, and it's free. and I do my thumbnails. So I started doing more thumbnails, and so I started getting more views that way. Started doing more consistent content. So trying to drop a video every day. So whereas if you go back to my old videos, I had like these stacks and stacks of boxes, and I would just have this long video of me undoing my boxes. Now, a lot of times I'll split them up and I'll pre-record them because YouTube likes pre-recorded stuff more than they do lives. Although I like lives better, more interaction with the community. So I have to split that up, right? What I want versus what YouTube likes. So I started doing more pre-recorded and did that. And I saw what other channels were doing. And if I felt like I could do like a small twist on it and not just be a copycat, then that's what I tried to do. Other than that, just consistent content. If you're putting a video out like once a month and there's no thumbnail on it, YouTube is not going to suggest it to people. And lastly, jumping in chats. I'm all over the board, either if it's an auction or somebody else is doing an interview or something. I'm in the chats. I'm commenting on the videos, different things like that. And so like with your show that you were doing about the new channels.
Oh, yeah.
When you do that, I go to the new channel and I would click on the link to make sure I was subscribed to them. And so if I wasn't and I did, I'd go into the video and say, hey, just subbed you up. Good content, give them something that they indicate you actually watched their video. And then I let them know that you sent me. So that in turn lets them know more about you, lets them know about me, and lets other people see that I'm out there in the community. And that interaction, it breeds the benefit of more subscribers, but it also brings the benefit of, and no kids were harmed in the filming of this video, by the way. But yeah, so it brings about the interaction with people, but it also brings subscribers too, because people see that you're not just in your own little world, you're part of a group.
That's cool. Let me drill down on the thumbnail thing just a little bit, because this is something that I've been working on, are thumbnails, and trying to, I'm semi-technical, right? Like there's certain things that I can really do with computers and things like that. But when it comes to, I never consider myself a creative all. So the thumbnails that you do, is there a specific way that you're doing it? Like something that you did specifically that worked? Or did you try multiple things, or did you say, okay, I'm going to do it like this, throw it out there and let's go?
There are better ways to do it than I've done it. But if you look at my YouTube thumbnails, a lot of them look alike. And I just switch up like the wording and the title. And so that's because that's me being lazy. More than anything else. But yeah, so just something clear. Sometimes you have to border on clickbaity, and you have to border on that. I don't like to do that, so I try not to push it over. Again, some people do it and they're okay with it. I don't like to be clickbaited, and so I don't like to clickbait people. So if I say I opened up all these boxes and got this huge Batman key, it is a huge Batman key. It's not a clickbait thing, but it does get other people in. So.
Well, I know, like I tried a couple of the clickbaity titles and even did some more controversial stuff, and it's just not me. Like I just quit doing it because I went down a road. Like I've even been studying colors, like what colors people's eyes are attracted to and why they're attracted. Like I've studied all that stuff, just trying to figure out what's what, and maybe what I want to try to do going forward. Again, it's just who I am from, when I analytically, I look at things like that every day of my life. And so it just kind of carries over to this. But that's why I was interested to know kind of what you were, kind of what you were doing. And when you said, okay, I'm going to do this thumbnail, was there something specific you did that worked?
And then also tags. So I have a thing called TubeBuddy. It's free. It's a attachment or whatever in your browser, and it tells you what the trending tags based on your titling is. And so I started tagging my stuff a little bit better. Also with my giveaways that I do, I try to do things that interact and put my name out there, tagging me on Instagram, tagging me here. And that's the other thing. So I started with YouTube, but then I got on Instagram, and now they feed each other. So I'm at almost 2,300 followers on Instagram, and so like I said, some came from here and some came there, but they both all meet in the middle, and so it helps each other. So every time I drop a video, I put it on Instagram, and so whether YouTube they've hit the bell notification or whether YouTube suggests my video or not, they know that it's out there. So that cross pollination kind of works.
That's kind of how I do it too. As far as use Instagram for that way. Is there, like you call it TubeBuddy? That's where you kind of get your hashtags for that. Is there anything like that for Instagram that you use, or do you just use the TubeBuddy ones?
No, I just use the TubeBuddy ones. The ones on Instagram, I just use like trending things. So typically I post something on Instagram every day. So and it's with if it's Monday, it might be Mutant Monday, or Thor, Tech Tuesday, things like that. So I do that almost every single day. And so that's why I've gained the followership over there. Again, just the consistency aspect.
Right. No, I think that's a great answer. All right. So question 7, and this is a question I've asked for the last 3 or 4 shows, just because I heard it somewhere, and then I thought, well, I'm just going to ask some different people what they think. And so question 7 is this: what do you believe is the single biggest challenge to the comic book collector today?
The comic book collector. So the person out there trying to buy books to either hold them for monetary value.
Even somebody that's just trying to get into the hobby, like, somebody new, because that's one of the things that we talk about, like Jen and I talked about last week was, and you were saying too, about accessibility, and the price seems to be an issue these days because there's so much spec. And books will jump before anybody can even jump in. So I just wondered if you think there is is that the biggest challenge? Are there other challenges that you see for the collector?
So this is just one man's less than humble opinion. So this is not necessarily the views of SmallTown Collectibles. There's your disclaimer.
There you go.
I think that overall, a lot of comic book people, or there's a few things. One, comic books are made to be movies now, because that's generally what is being done. That's where they make the big bucks at. So if you read Crossover, which is a good series by Donny Cates, but if you read anything Donny Cates does, it's made to be a movie. Berserker was not made to be a comic book. Keanu Reeves might have thought it was cool to do a comic book, but he was really setting himself up for the next show. And so those read differently. Also, books are made to be in omnibuses now. And so, like, if you have, you can fit 13 in an omnibus or something like that. You might have a 10-part storyline. You're going to have 3 filler issues that are nothing but junk. It's not about telling a good story, right? And so that's another issue. The other issue is that I feel like that as a whole, that comic book writers are more interested in making statements than they are telling good stories. And so because of that, they anger the people that have the money to buy them and have traditionally bought them, which are the 40-something-year-olds that have, middle-aged kids by now and have disposable income. The people that they are catering to are people that do not care to buy comic books. They're too broke to buy comic books, but yet they want to sell comic books. They're not really worried about selling comic books. They're just worried about stating their little, innuendos and all that kind of stuff. I don't like that. And I feel like a lot of people have been pushed out of getting back into the collecting aspect because of that. Another issue is that ever since Image and the guys that left Image left Marvel hanging, right? When Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, all the big talent walked away and started Image, Marvel was caught with their pants down. So ever since then, there has not been a writer or artist on a particular book for any length of time. Chris Claremont the days of Chris Claremont being on X-Men for what, 17 years, that will never happen again. And it keeps from being consistent storytelling. And so it's this, So those are some of the issues, and accessibility. To our earlier talking point, accessibility. Kids that don't know anything about the comic book medium being able to get to the comic books on a newsstand, or being able to afford a comic book. I mean, I used to could get 4 comics for the price that I get 1 comic for.
Facts. Yeah.
And so if I'm trying to get new readers, because everybody loves Batman, right? Until Bendis got a hold of it, everybody loves Superman. So, but everybody likes those characters. But DC or Marvel, they have this whole treasure trove of other characters that good stories can be told by good writers, good artists, but kids are not as familiar with Hawkman and some of these other Plastic Man, these other characters, right? And they are not going to spend $4 on a character they don't know anything about.
Right.
And so then they get a series and it gets canceled, and they go, well, DC goes, well, hey, I can't do a series because I'm not selling enough books. Your price point is pushing people out. That's why I love the True Believers issues that they put out. And if nothing else, put those True Believers out in the movie theater and out there like that. It's a very inexpensive way to get people, those kids' attention, get the parents hooked back in maybe too, while they're sitting there thinking about the medium, and at a very inexpensive price point.
I think it's a great answer. Like, there are many points you made there that I 100% agree with. And it is, and things that I have thought, a lot of times you're right. There's just, it's not about the storytelling. It's about getting a social issue across or something that they believe. And you're right. A lot of the people that are buying the books, they don't want that. They just want to read a good story about, their favorite superhero. I love that answer, man. I think that's a great answer.
Well, think about it. I mean, comic books have always been a little controversial if you think about it. If you go back to X-Men 1, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby made the Professor X and Magneto to be Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. 1963, you're in the middle of the civil rights still. That would be considered controversial, or his source material, right? But people as a whole were kind of okay with that. People saw that, hey, everybody's equal. This is crazy. They just have 2 different views of the way they go about getting equality, so on and so forth. The drug issues, where the Comic Code Authority would not approve Stan Lee in the Spider-Man issue where Harry gets, or the Green Lantern one where Speedy is on drugs. But people agreed that was a bad thing. So they were telling a controversial thing, but people as a whole agreed that was bad. Nowadays, the push that they're trying to give is things that people are like, I don't care what you do to yourself, but I don't have to agree with the way you live, right?
Sure.
Okay. I'm not going to dictate what you do at home, but you can't make me agree or disagree with you. And I think that's more of what it is. And it's like, okay, if you don't agree and if you don't accept and you don't do all this, then now all of a sudden you're evil, you're bad, and you're a horrible person. And I don't even know why you wasted $4. I mean, you can have some artists even say, hey, if you don't like my stuff, don't like my stances, don't buy my comic. If I was their publisher, I would call them up and say, if you ever make a statement like that again, you will never sell a comic with this company anymore. Is that understood? But they just let them go. I'm not sure as to why. I think Disney is starting to crack down on Marvel a little bit because they see what a treasure trove of IP that Marvel has and what kind of money they can do with it. And they have actually talked to some of the Star Wars actors as an example and said, hey, look, do not talk bad about our customer base. And so
right, sure.
Maybe they'll get to comics eventually.
Yeah, I hope so. But no, that's one of the best answers I've been given on that, and I really appreciate that because, like I said, you made a lot of really solid points there. I think a lot of things for people to really think about for the comic book industry as a whole. So that was a great answer. Question 8 was, and you kind of already answered this. I was going to ask you if you were a reader or a collector, or both. And it sounds like you're both, right? Like it started out as reading. It's what Jen and I were talking about last week on the last show. Was she's a reader that became a collector,
Right.
that because she wasn't necessarily interested in reselling. I know you resell some. And is that more for you just to kind of keep the hobby churning for you, to kind of keep some cash flow to be able to buy other books that you really want? Or is it like, for me, it's almost kind of like a side hustle. I just like doing it. And I get to do it with something I really enjoy.
Right. Yeah, that is kind of an added benefit when you can sell something you enjoy. I am a salesperson in real life. Well, in the position I'm in, I don't do much selling anymore, but I mean that's what I'm used to. And so it just kind of makes sense that you would sell something you like. And so yeah, it is fun to me. It does help fund my addiction called comic book collecting. But sometimes it's also me culling my stuff. So when I got back into collecting, I immediately went back to the books that I left off with. And so some of those books, started reading them like, I'm just not as interested in these books anymore. So I've culled those out, or I'll think I'm going to go, because I'm a run collector. I'm not a key collector. And so, I'll start going to do a run. I'm like, I'm really not enjoying this. I'm going to get rid of this. So I started doing that on my Amazing Spider-Man when I was thinking about doing an Amazing Spider-Man run. I was like, I'm just not enjoying doing this. So I sold my Spider-Man as an example. So, so it's a number of reasons why I've chosen to pick up selling. I don't sell on eBay because of fees, but I sell on Instagram and then YouTube live auctions.
Cool. Question 9, and I've wanted to always ask you this and really kind of see how this thought. I mean, I get it. Like I said, it's going to be a dumb question, but I just want to ask it anyway. I've heard you say quite a bit, a low grade is better than no grade. And so when you say that, like, are you more of a, because I guess the question is, are you more of a raw book guy, to be able to read it, or when you're buying books, you like to have them graded?
I go back and forth. Me and CGC have a love-hate relationship. But low grade is better than no grade. And what I mean by that is that part of the collecting community, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, because it takes all to make the world go round. But part of the collecting community only collects 9/8. There's this huge disparity between 9/8 and 9/6. We're talking about one tick, but we're talking about several hundreds of dollars depending on the book. And that just don't make sense to me, because I grew up with 3 grades, right? It's falling apart, it's mint, or it's okay. Those are my 3 grades, right? And, so getting back in, and one of my first videos I ever done was a CGC unboxing, because I was liking watching these things, because CGC wasn't existent back then.
Yeah.
So that was a new thing, and you can see that I was not too happy with the grades because I didn't know nothing about pressing and none of that stuff. But I guess it taught me a lot. But people will chase those 9/8, and all the money that people will say, okay, I'm going to buy this, sell it, upgrade, buy upgrade, and that's fine if that's your thing and you like to do. But how many more books could you buy that present well, if you're getting them graded, especially, they present well, because you can't read them.
Right.
If you're going to get them to, they present well, what does it matter if it's a 9/8? Because why are you buying it? Because to me, I'm buying it for me, because it makes it tickles, it gives me that dopamine fix in my mind. So, that's the reason I'm buying it. I'm not buying it to resell it. Now, I'd be a liar to say that I don't think about resale value, because I'm thinking, hey, if I got tired of it, can I sell it, at least get my money back out of it? But I got a giant size X-Men over there. It's a 4/5, and it's signed by Herb Trimpe. And that's a big book right now. I could sell that thing for 3 times what I paid for it last year. I don't plan on selling it. But some people are like, well, I'd go from a 4.5 to an 8.0. You know how much money that is?
Yeah.
I can buy a bunch of Batman books. I can buy a bunch more 181 homages, whatever, for what it's going to cost to go from that grade. It's just not worth it to me. And again, if people collect that way, that's fine. But that's just not me.
Well, that's the reason I wanted to ask you, because I know, I think all of us at some point collected, got out of it, came back to it, right? So
Right.
when I came back, it was all the, you got to get a 9.8, you got to get a 9.8. And there are books out there that I have done that. I have bought and upgraded my books with some of my really, really high dollar books. Like my AF-15 started out as a 1.0.
Mm-hmm.
And I've upgraded it to a 5 over the years, just with my uncle. Like I said, he was a straight hustler. I mean, and he was a guy that could take a nickel and make $50 out of it. It was the most insane thing I've ever seen. But with his help, I was able to do that. He's the one that gave me the book anyway, to begin with. And so I've done that several times. But there are books now that I want that I don't even really – I have them that are ungraded, but they're not in great shape. So I've got a reader, but I want something that I can display. And I'm like, when I heard you say that, I was like, okay, that makes total sense to me, because I'm not going to be able to read it. I just want the book. And as long as it presents well and I can hang it up on my wall like it's a piece of art, at that point, it becomes a piece of art for me.
Right.
And it tickles, like you said, it's that dopamine drip that you get from finding that book or owning that book and being able to display that book in your overall collection. And that is something that I've heard you say a few times, and it just stood out to me. And I was like, if I get him on here, I want to ask him, exactly where he kind of came with that, because you're right. I was looking at a Forever People #1 the other day.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the book. I just don't have a graded copy. And the copy that I have is not in great shape. It would, might grade a 3 or a 4. I've read it 1,000 times. But I love Darkseid, and obviously that's pretty hot right now with the Snyder Cut. And I was just looking through, and the price difference between, like, I looked at a 5 that was really pretty nice. I mean, like, it looked nice. And that's not even that big of an expensive book, but to go up to like a 9.6, a 9.8, it's $4,000 versus paying like $300 or $400, for a lower grade. Or even that 5.0 was like $180 or something like that. It wasn't even that expensive, but it was really pretty. It was, good color. Just had a few ticks. It presented well. So no, I think that is great. And I'm like you, people can collect how they want, right? You collect however you want. It's your money. You do what you want to do, whatever makes you happy. But I think there's some sense to be made out of that when, you could buy a book you want and maybe get it at a 7 and it presents well. And then you can take that other $2,000 you would have spent to get that 9.8 and go get you some other books you want.
Right. And so let me try to appeal to the person that goes to the 9.8. Again, at the end of the day, if I don't appeal to them, that's fine too. But if you're doing it for money, think about this. A rising tide lifts all ships. If you have a 9.8 Hulk 181, I'd love one, but I'm never going to have one because I'm never going to spend that kind of money on a 9.8 Hulk 181. I've got a Hulk 181 already. So, but a 9.8 Hulk 181, you bought it. It's yours. What kind of market do you have for that book? Really?
Not much, because there's just a few people that will even consider paying that much money for a book.
Exactly. So what happens is just like the second print thing, that was second, third prints. Those were like, they had leprosy back in the day, but now they're a thing. And so just like with that, people eventually start going, well, I can't get the first print or I can't get the 9.8. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to get the next best thing. And then once that goes up, they say, I'm going to get the next best thing. If you're thinking about reselling, you're always going to have a bigger market for a lower grade book. Always. Because the barrier of entry is so much lower. And again, if you're wanting to resell, what's your market? If you're selling widgets, what kind of widgets are you selling? You want to sell shoes to people that wear shoes. You don't want to go to an island full of no shoes, right? So that's why I think about it too and rationalize it. It's like Hulk 180 and 181 is a perfect example. 181 is the desired book. We all know where Wolverine's first appearance is, but anyhow, it's Foom 2. But 180 has started to rise by virtue of people getting out of the 181. It's already priced out. And so they're going to the 180. They're even going to 182, which for people that know Wolverine, that's a nothing book. You know, he's in two things. He's out of there. But that's why I think about it that way. And but on grading though, back to the grading or the raw deal, unless it's a silver or a golden age book, I'm not going to grade a modern book unless it's up there, because I want to at least break even. If my mortgage payment needed to be made tomorrow and I had to sell my comic books, I want to at least have a very high modern book. And most moderns are not really worth the grading fees and pressing and all that kind of stuff associated with that. So I unless it's a 9.6 or 9.8, I'm not going to grade a modern book. But, you know, silver and golden age, that's a different story. That stuff rarely, you know, goes up or down, or nothing but up, you know.
Right. No, cool, man. Love it. I'm glad I asked the question. I was like, it's probably a dumb question to ask him, but I'm going to ask him anyway. And I thought that was a great answer and discussion. So question 10, your last question. And I just want to know, what are some channels that the Southern Comic Geek watches that maybe all the rest of us should be watching? Are there any, because now I know, you know, like a lot of us, like we're in a group chat together, I think maybe Burke family. And, you know, we all know a lot of the same channels, but are there any channels maybe outside of that purview or that realm that maybe any of us that we should be watching? Like there's a guy that Gary B, the casual comic guy, introduced me to, Jitterbug Jerry. And he has Golden Age books, and he does a lot of restoration and things. That's the most interesting thing in the world. I love watching that. And he's a brand new YouTuber, but it's really interesting to watch. So is there anything that you like that's just kind of an offshoot of it?
Wow. Some of my friends that have smaller channels are going to say, well, I wish you would have shouted me out or something at this point. But so if I forget somebody's channel, here's the disclaimer. I do a lot of disclaimers, it seems, right?
No, it's all right.
But anyway, if I forget somebody's channel, don't hold it against me. Yeah, you're right. There's kind of like cliques, you know, in the sense that people, you know, start liking the groups associated with this. And then you have this group over here, this group over here. And so kind of tagging it back into, no pun intended, but tagging it back into the question earlier about getting out there and getting subscriptions is purposely getting outside of your comfort zone and finding groups that they think much the same way you do. You just you're not in that group yet. And is to find those groups like that. But Discovery Bay Comics, everybody knows him. He just crossed over 2K not too long ago. Rod the Rican, just a Rican. Metarog does a shout out for all the contestants around. He's with this guy that nobody should hang with, Bub's Comics. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, that guy's Bub's Comics. No, he's a fellow Kentuckian, has been on 10 Questions, and yes, that was the biggest mistake I ever made. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, Bub. I love Bub.
You had to rate it. You rate it PG-13 or R. You know, you had Bub on here.
Yeah.
Bub's a cool guy.
He is a good guy.
So him and Metarog do the No Faces chat. But like you, once I kind of wiggle into one of these groups, there's so many more little different niches that I might not necessarily like myself, but it is so interesting. Another one of those is like foreign editions of comics. I'm a reader, so to think foreign editions would appeal to me, it doesn't really appeal to my readership, obviously, because I only speak English. I can scratch my way around Spanish, but you know, is just the collectible aspect of it. And so foreign editions, there's this little niche in the community that you can get with foreign edition comics. But Comic Foo, he's another one. Him, Squatchy, Stevie B, and all those guys. Of course, you mentioned Burt Family. Two Brothers Comics is another group that there's some kind of overlap between them and Burt,
Yeah.
but yeah, and Wink's another one. He's all up in the middle of a lot of those groups as well. So
Cool, man. Jason, brother, I appreciate it. I've 100% enjoyed this. Great chat. I really appreciate you coming on. Guys, if you're watching, I'll put all of Jason's Southern Comic Geek, all the info to find him down in the description below. Couple things before we leave here. Of course, Gary B started the hashtag Grow Together initiative. Really cool. I think everybody that I shouted out has reached their subscriber count except for one, and they're 2 away now. So hopefully I'll be able to give away a $100 mystery box here in hopefully this week. So definitely go look for anything that says hashtag Grow Together. You'll see a lot of cool people supporting each other in the comic book community. It was a very, very cool thing that Gary B started. Remember that I have the code for a limited time, and not a whole lot longer. It's STC10. You can go over to Street Level Hero LA, purchase something there. You'll get 10% off your order, and 25% of your overall order will be donated to the American Cancer Society for cancer research. Very important cause to me. The uncle that we were talking about here earlier, I lost him to cancer, lost my dad to cancer. And my mother-in-law to cancer. So it's a very, very important issue for me, and I hope you'll go over there, buy something cool, save a little money, and donate a little money to a great, great cause. So, guys, Jason, the Southern Comic Geek, 10 questions, as we always end this thing. Until next time.